If you're curious about some of the worst mistakes women make when they are suffering from hair loss, then stay tuned. This video is for you. Thinking that you're alone when it comes to women's hair loss is probably chief among these mistakes. Some 45% of women will keep their full head of hair, and that means the other 55% of us, in which I would include myself, will suffer from thinning hair and hair loss over our lifetimes. And it's not just for women who are postmenopausal either. It's not just a function of getting old. At age 29 even, there are studies that show that 12% of women by that age will show detectable signs of hair loss. And so that means that a clinician, like a doctor, will be able to look at them and in 12% of women be able to diagnose something akin to female pattern hair loss, or what is also called androgenetic alopecia. 12% of women, that's a lot of women. That means if you had 10 female friends and you guys were in a room together, one of you, okay, 12%, anyhow, you get what I mean, right? Math. One or more of you would be showing signs of clinically significant or noticeable hair loss. That's a lot. Age 29, not even age 30. And I can tell you from my own experience, I hear from women, especially on Instagram in my DMs. I've been opening myself up for more than a year and a half now to women who have questions specifically about Rogaine. I've heard from people as young as age 14 and 15 experiencing women's hair loss. So definitely you're not alone. Most women seem to think that they are. You 100% are not. And you actually are in the majority of women, because the majority of us are going to deal with hair loss at some point in our lives. The other mistake a lot of women make, in my experience from hearing from so many of you, is that they wait to get a diagnosis. They wait to get a diagnosis from their doctor. I'm not going to get all internet mom on you. But very few people say, gosh, I'm so glad I waited 2 years to see my doctor about my hair loss. No, almost always what I hear from people is, gosh, I really wish I went sooner. Like, I buried my head in the sand about it for a year, but had I done something a year ago, then maybe this would be more treatable or it wouldn't have got so advanced. I'm hearing that actually more and more. And so I think that that is a really common mistake. And I know it is scary to see a doctor, and I know that people's access to healthcare is different, but if you possibly can, I would say if you can, definitely seek the advice of an actual physician. I am not a physician, I am a YouTuber, and I talk about my experience with hair loss and Rogaine, and I do not want to represent myself as a healthcare practitioner. That's why I'm suggesting that you should see your own and get a definitive diagnosis, because once you do that, you'll feel sort of like at least a cloud is lifted, or that you've put some steps into motion into getting the proper care. And I almost guarantee you that as soon as you start putting that ball in motion, you will start to feel better about it, let alone if you do get a diagnosis and then you get like an actual treatment plan. Usually once you get that treatment plan, then you will feel a lot better about the whole hair loss and hair thinning situation. Not seeking out support is another really common hair loss mistake, especially in the earlier days when you're sort of not sure what's going on and you probably feel a whole lot of shame. I'm here to tell you there's nothing to be ashamed about. I really want to help end the stigma for women against hair loss. It happens, and you know what? We are more than our hair. But until then, you should probably try and find some supports for yourself. That might be other friends who talk openly about hair loss or have maybe mentioned things that they've done. And sometimes those kind of people can be hard to find, especially if you're on the younger side. I know, when I was in my 30s, and even now that I'm in my early 40s, I am not in the majority of my friends in terms of my hair situation. I have hair loss and lots of them don't, so they kind of can't really relate to me. They don't have a lot of advice necessarily to share with me, but there are places still that you can seek for advice if that doesn't come from your own peer group, and that is just like seek out really positive-minded support groups. Here on my channel, I talk a lot about a Facebook group that really has helped me, and I will go ahead and put a link down to it below in the description box if you want to join them. They're on Facebook, so I know we all can be in our feelings about Facebook, but if you are on Facebook, they're a really nice group of supportive ladies, and they're very protective of each other, and they don't let any bullying or anything like that go on, so I can assure you it is a safe space if you're interested in it. And speaking of support, if you would support me by giving this video a like, and please consider subscribing to this channel as well. Hair loss is a chronic condition, and so what I do is I try and unpick all the sort of sticking points that happen with it, whether you use Rogaine or minoxidil or whether you don't. I do talk about it on this channel. So if you subscribe, that helps to support me here, but also will help you as well as you sort of make your way through this journey and hopefully recover from hair loss. This is not a brand new point, but one that I've made here, but I feel like it is always worth repeating, and that is some of us ladies are quite stubborn about using helper hair. And so what is helper hair? Helper hair covers the spectrum of anything that is not your biological hair, and that can mean clip-in extensions, it can mean a topper, it can mean a wig, it can mean a halo hair extension, all kinds of things that help out your biological hair. That's all helper hair. We're not calling it fake hair anymore. Those days are over. And I just want to remind you, if you're being really stubborn about this, that helper hair, the amount of women I hear saying that it changed their life and made them feel confident and happy again and sexy, I can't even begin to tell you. I almost feel like most of us should not even bother. We should just shave our head and get a wig because we're gonna look better with that wig on anyway. And it will certainly cut down on the bad hair days. Joking aside, don't be stubborn about helper hair. That is a hair loss mistake that I see lots of women make over and over again. And almost all of them say, gosh, why didn't I just do this earlier? It looks so good. I'm so happy with it. Another thing that I hear women complain about is that they listened to crazy advice. And I think it's a terrible idea, obviously, to listen to crazy advice. What is crazy advice? All I can say about crazy advice is when you hear it, you know it. You know that it doesn't sound at all. It often involves vegetables or some kind of water in some sort of form. And it's almost always like somebody's daughter's aunt's sister. It's always like some person like that had this like amazing hair regrowth. It's like never someone who's like 1 degree. It's always like someone super remote. Like there's always some story about some family member's friend's daughter's sister. There's one of these women in like every culture in the entire world. I'm convinced of it. And I'm not gonna breathe life into any of these kind of, I guess you could call them natural treatments or just like sort of odd sounding treatments. You can look them up yourself. YouTube is rife with them. But I would say if it sounds too good to be true, that's because it is. And you'll see even YouTubers talk about it and say how much growth they've had in 30 days. And they'll show you like 6 inches of hair growth. Like hair cannot grow that quickly. You cannot grow 6 inches of hair in 30 days. It is, as far as I know, not really possible. And if it is, you're some sort of anomaly of humankind, or there's probably something not right with you either. So those aren't real, okay? Delaying treatment is another really common mistake, and one that I really want you to think about before you go down this path, because some women choose not to use helper hair, and that's cool, you know, you do you, but some women do go and get a diagnosis, and they get a list of advice and medications or steps to take from their actual physician, and they decide they're just not gonna do any of the things that their doctor told them to do. And so I can say from what I've heard from other women, and this has been becoming a more and more frequent trope in my Instagram DMs, because women DM me, because I have on Instagram, I've offered people to try and help them if I can, just sharing my own experience if they want to message me directly on Instagram, and they do. A common thing that I hear is that their doctor told them to, whatever it is, use Rogaine, don't use Rogaine, use this medicine, that medicine, try this shampoo and try that. And they don't do any of them, and they wait for a year, and then they say, almost inevitably, I wish I had talked to and listened to what my doctor had told me a year ago instead of just putting it off, because maybe I could have prevented some of this hair loss that has happened between then and now. So if you get a treatment plan from your doctor, I'm not going to tell you whether to do it or not, but I would say maybe if you're not too sure about it, then maybe seek out a second medical opinion if you're not too confident in the medical advice that you've been given. But I would say ignoring what your doctor says doesn't seem to be the best route. Like, I haven't heard of just too many people saying, oh, wow, I'm so glad I ignored my doctor's advice and my hair is looking so much better without having done absolutely anything to it. That's not usually how it works, just from what I've been hearing. Another mistake I hear a lot of women complain about is that they don't believe in using chemicals, and I'm going to put air quotes around chemicals, and instead they buy products that don't work at all instead and just spend lots of money that they don't have. Listen, I don't want to get into the whole sort of natural versus non-natural debate, but chemicals are in almost everything. And if you think that you're buying a product that has no chemicals in it, I mean, are you really? There's a lot of sort of scammy marketing kind of talk, especially about women's hair loss products that promise you the moon and they really can't deliver. This is not any kind of a plug for any kind of medication or special shampoo or anything like that. I just want to say, like, you don't have to be skeptical of anything that is sort of non-natural versus natural, because a lot of the things that are marketed as natural really aren't all that natural, or they are natural, right? And so sometimes they'll have products that don't have sulfates in them or don't have parabens and stuff like that, but they'll be using other sort of stabilizing or preservative ingredients as well that are not necessarily perfect either. I'm just saying, don't just fall for things because they're saying it's like an all natural cure and it's something that's marketed to you for hair loss and it's expensive. Like, do your research and be really skeptical of those kinds of things. Another mistake is getting into debt with money you don't have to try and reverse hair loss really suddenly or quickly. And that means buying all kinds of sort of gadgets and gizmos you might see. And am I saying not to buy any of them? No, I'm just saying, like, if you don't have a ton of money to spend right now, maybe don't just go out and buy all the sort of supposed quick fixes. I don't want to lay blame on any one particular thing, but I just want to say when women have invested their money, usually the best investments have been seeking actual treatment for their hair loss to try and get to the bottom of what's going on. And the other thing that women seem to have a really high rate of return in terms of satisfaction on is investing in some sort of helper hair, toppers, a really beautiful wig, or nice extensions, or like a halo type extension, any kind that don't tug on your own actual hair too much, seem to be the ones that people are the happiest with. Don't go blowing money you don't have. Like, it is not necessary. Don't go into debt for this. There are other ways to spend your money in a smart way, in a way that makes sense, in a way that's going to give you hair regrowth or offer some sort of hair solution that's going to work for you better than sort of scammy things that may or may not work. Believing everything you see here on YouTube is another really common hair loss mistake that women make, especially in the beginning. They're just like desperately looking for solutions, and maybe you can relate to this, and so you're clicking on all these different videos with women showing thumbnails, which is the image you see before you watch the actual video, of like impressive hair regrowth and, you know, before and after hair loss and regrowth within 1 month. And you'll be looking and looking, and you'll often find that these just don't offer the solution that you are looking for. A lot of it is misleading. And let me tell you the truth about YouTube. I've been a YouTuber now for a number of years. You can kind of record whatever you want and put it up on YouTube. And unless it's fairly harmful and egregious, no one's gonna tell you to take it down. So there's just a lot of unchecked stuff just running riot here. And as much as I love this platform as a place to learn, there's plenty of stuff out there that is, if not harmful, then completely useless or misleading. So just don't believe everything that you see here on YouTube. And, you know, even my stuff, you can fact check it, you can check it. I am happy if you actually do so. And I almost wonder if some of those other YouTubers will, you know, say the same thing. I've even seen YouTube videos here about how like positive self-talk or like sort of self-hypnosis helps with hair loss. Maybe it does, but it's equally possible that it doesn't. But I was shocked to see the number of comments there saying that was great and how interesting and helpful they thought that video was. So that just surprised me. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I'm always trying to share the sort of best and newest information that I find with you guys. And so what's come to my attention lately is a fairly new YouTube channel called The Hair Loss Show. And it is a YouTube channel by actual hair loss doctors who give really great information about, you know, shampoos, Rogaine and minoxidil, etc. and so forth. And these are actual doctors. And so you might find some help there. So just wanted to share that with you. That's a channel actually I've been enjoying too. I do watch other hair loss YouTubers, and I do like to see what else is out there as well, because I'm always learning too. Another sticking point that really seems to bother women, and I don't want to minimize the importance of this, but they are worried and nervous that their spouse or their partner or even someone they're going to start dating is going to notice their hair loss. Just in my own experience, you know, when you've had a spouse for a long time, they don't tend to notice a lot about you. Maybe that's just me, but oftentimes you can go and get like a significant haircut and they barely notice anything is different about you. So probably you're noticing it a lot and they're not noticing it nearly as much. And so all that to say, you know, just don't worry about it. Don't be so hard on yourself. I'm not trying to say it doesn't exist, but I can almost guarantee you it's on the top of your mind and very low on their list of priorities in life. When it comes to dating, that's a little different. I understand that it's, you know, you're dealing with someone you don't know. Maybe you're using helper hair, and so you don't want them thinking that you have a beautiful full head of hair and it's all like fake. But we talked about that, right? We're just calling it helper hair. And all I have to say about that is also they have to accept you for who you are. And also, I don't think they care as much as you do, and sometimes don't even notice that much. Like, probably you're really worried about it, and probably again they haven't noticed, they may not notice, and they just don't care. Another thing I wanted to say is that you are not your hair, and a lot of women make this mistake as well. Their identity is very, very bound up in ideas of what their hair should look like and how other people are seeing their hair. But you are not your hair, you're more than that. At the end of life, no one's gonna remember you for your hair. They're gonna remember you for what's inside and from what's coming from your heart instead. And so I made this little thing on Instagram and I put it up, but I'm just putting it here for you guys to look at as well. You know, you are just so much more than these strands that are coming out of your head. Never lose sight of that. Never ever lose sight of that. Worrying about the stigma of medication is something that a lot of women make this mistake around, and I did this as well. You know, when I first sort of got in line tentatively at Walmart to buy Rogaine because it was behind the counter, I was like super nervous and sheepish about the whole thing. I was convinced that the woman behind me was like gonna judge me. She wasn't. She was like in line at Walmart with her sniffly toddler, and the both of them were like coughing. This is in the before times, before, you know, like when you could cough and blow your nose openly. I don't know why I thought she was judging me. She didn't care. She just wanted to get her stuff and get out of there just like I did. And also the pharmacy assistant, like when I asked her for men's Rogaine instead of women's, because I use the men's, and I've made a video about that. You can go ahead and watch that if you haven't yet. She didn't care either. She just handed me the men's Rogaine. Here I was thinking, like, is she gonna ask me a question because why am I buying men's instead of women? No, nobody cares. You care a lot. Nobody else cares. There really is no stigma other than the one you're kind of imagining about different medications and stuff like that. Like people standing in line, people at the pharmacy, they don't care. They've seen it all. They don't care about you and your hair loss. Feeling hopeless about hair loss is another really common mistake, and one that I see a lot of women comment about, especially when they're at the beginning of their hair loss journey. Typically after about, from what I'm seeing, from after about a year, women seem to sort of come around to the idea that this is a manageable condition or something that they're going to take into their own hands. But at the very beginning, a lot of them feel a lot of despair and hopelessness. And I just want to say that's really legitimate. But you will come to see that actually that is a mistaken way of thinking. There's always hope. There's things you can do. There's ways to tackle this, whether it be with your bio hair, with helper hair, with medicines, with seeing different specialists. There is a way, and there is always hope. If you really are struggling and feeling desperate or feeling like you're going to do something desperate, I'm going to put some links down below because I do take this seriously. And so I understand that sometimes you can be absolutely feeling like you're at the end of your rope with this kind of stuff. Have a look down below. There are crisis hotlines for you to get in touch with, and you don't have to suffer alone, and you don't have to cope with these terrible feelings of hopelessness. You are definitely not alone. Oh, I also wanted to add, it gets better. I know that that might sound like a bit of a cliche, but it actually really does. You will not feel this way if you're feeling really crappy about this. You won't feel this way forever. I can promise you. I've gone through all the emotions, the whole roller coaster, the ups, the downs, and you'll come around to it and it will get better. I promise you. From the moment you think that you're starting to notice hair loss and hair thinning, you should start taking progress pictures just to track what's going on. And so this is another frequent mistake, is that we tend to just get really caught up in our emotions and worrying and constant checking. But what we really should be doing is just having a really good log of pictures to show what's going on. And so do you want to be taking these every second day in all kinds of different lighting conditions? No. What you want to do is pick one day of the month where you're going to take this picture. Make it the first of the month, peg it to the day that you're paying your Visa bill. I don't know, like peg it to some day where you know you're doing something else, or just make it the first of the month and take a picture, stand in the same spot of your home with the same general lighting conditions, part your hair pretty much the same way, and take that progress picture of where you have thinning and hair loss. And this is great for a number of reasons. If you want to show your doctor, in the future, you'll have a nice backlog with dated pictures if you keep them in your phone. And if you get any kind of treatments as well, you'll be able to track whether they're working. But the key here really is just not to take tons and tons of pictures, because that will just drive you crazy and you won't see any difference from week to week. But from month to month, you will start to see a difference. Hopefully you'll start getting some regrowth, and if you do get treatments, they'll start to work. But maybe before you go and see a doctor as well, you'll be able to just basically no matter what, you want to track what's going on with your hair, but only one time a month. You will probably do more harm to yourself mentally than good if you're constantly taking pictures, because that will just like feed into some sort of obsessive loop that I don't want you to get into. So try and discipline yourself to doing it once a month. Frequent hair checking, that's another one you want to avoid. And what does that mean? That means like checking your hair, having like a look at it in every light imaginable. I know we've all been guilty about this, and I still try and avoid doing this. And the impulse to do it is strong. Let me tell you, even years in, I still want to kind of have a good look in every kind of different light. Nothing good is going to come from this. Looking at your hair in the mirror when you're like out shopping, out at the gym, out at work, out in every kind of different mirror possible is not a good thing. That only leads down to the path of hair obsession. And it is hard not to feel obsessed, but again, you have to really try and discipline yourself not to look like you're not gonna look. And you know, some places have really bad lighting. Like for me, at my gym, the lighting there is the worst. It is this very bright light from above. And let me tell you, my scalp looks so shiny in that light. So I have promised myself now that I just try not to look up when I'm passing that mirror. Like I try not to pause in front of that one in particular, because it's gonna make my scalp look so shiny. And what's the benefit of that? Really, there's zero benefit. I'm pretty happy with how my hair loss and regrowth is looking right now. That just takes me down a couple pegs, so I just avoid it. And really, don't do it. Don't check your hair obsessively. Follow this piece of advice if you follow none of the other pieces of advice that I've given you so far. Getting lost in obsessive thoughts about hair is really, really common when you first are starting to deal with hair loss and thinning hair. And I want to reassure you that it seems like almost everyone I know who's dealt with hair loss just gets super fixated, super obsessed with their hair, and it can just take over. You could be just like relaxing. You only have a few hours to relax in the evening, and you'll just be there trying to chill and watch some Netflix, and all of a sudden these creeping thoughts come into your head about your hair loss. And so the next thing you know, you start running your fingers through your hair, and then you're pulling out a bunch of strands, and then you're going to look at the mirror again to see what the situation is. It's really easy to become overwhelmed and like sucked in by these thoughts. Try your best to resist them. What I do is the minute that I want to start thinking about hair loss, and this is less of a problem for me now that I have quite a good amount of regrowth that I'm really happy with. But what I used to do is just like have some sort of, just like recognize that I would be thinking about this and just flipping the switch and just turning my thought to something else. Like I would just try and stop the obsessive thought in its track and pivot right away. And the more I did this, the better I got at it. And so I found myself overall having less obsessive hair thoughts. So I hope that helps. Being really envious when you see other women pass you by with a beautiful head of hair, or maybe women you know, is another common mistake. I think we do this more often with women that we just see, like if we're out and about, say you're like in the mall or at a food court and you're just passing someone by and they have a beautiful head of shiny, glossy, thick hair. And your first thought is, I wish my hair looked like that. That person's so lucky to have such an amazing head of hair. Let me just tell you, check yourself, okay? Because you really don't know if that is actually their hair or not. And I say this because when I was completely bald, and I know I've said this story before here on my channel, but it bears repeating because it's a good one, if I do say so myself. I had a wig, and this wig was very, very nice looking, better looking than my own hair has ever looked because it was more manageable, more stylish, had the right amount of volume. People would give me compliments on this wig, just people passing me on the street. They didn't know I was bald, and they just really thought I had nice looking hair. So that goes to show you that you could be looking at women with beautiful heads of hair, and that might not actually be their hair. They could have a wig on, they could have a top, or they could have lots of extensions. Like, you don't know what you're looking at. So before you start getting envious about how easy that other woman's life is, just remember you might also not know exactly what's going on. You just don't. She could be wearing helper hair. She could be born with it. I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, envy, again, is one of those emotions that's really not going to help anybody here. And often you don't exactly know what you're looking at. You know what I'm saying? Which is good news for you, because that means if you get helper hair and you're really happy with it, then you too will be a woman who is an object of envy. Feeling like you're an old lady or anything less than sexy is just wrong. It's bad. Don't do it. Let me tell you, there's so many amazing looking, attractive, sexy women. Let's talk about Dolly Parton, who we don't deserve. She is so sexy still, and has always been. Sex appeal has always been her image, and she's always worn a wig. So if you didn't know that, you know that now. Not to mention just so many other women, not only just in the media, but just around in everyday life, listen, they have hair loss. Like we said, a huge proportion of women, actually the majority, suffer from some sort of hair loss at some point. And so if you're letting this make you feel like you're older than your actual age or that you're not sexy, don't let it. Do not let that get to you. It is absolutely not true. It's a myth. Waiting until you're really close to a big event to deal with your hair loss is another big mistake. Don't do this. A lot of people wait until they're about a couple months out from their wedding, even though they knew they were going to be getting married like more than a year before that and have been planning for a long time, to actually address their hair loss or maybe some other big vacation sort of thing, their kind of lifetime event. That's not the time, because if you want your hair to actually grow, you need months to be able to do that. Months and months, not even just 1 month, more than a month. So that's a really common mistake that I see, is like people just wait to the last minute. And this is not really something you're gonna fix at the last minute unless you find a really nice topper that you like or other kind of helper hair. But even that takes time to research. If you purchase helper hair, it can take time, not only just to pick it out, but for it to actually just get shipped to you. A lot of people love to buy from all kinds of different international outlets where the price might be a little bit less, or, you know, just from really trusted vendors that come from far overseas from where you live. You need time, so don't wait till the last minute. If you know you have a wedding coming up in a year from now, the time to deal with it is now. And last of all, don't ever be ashamed to go out because you're suffering from hair loss. There are just so many things that you can do. Cover it up, use a cap, use a cute bandana and style it up, use a scarf to cover your hair, use hair fibers, use a spray if you're not gonna go down the route of buying helper hair or using medications or topicals like Rogaine and minoxidil. There's lots to do. Never ever let your hair loss keep you inside. Life is short, let me tell you. I've lived through a lot of crazy bad stuff, but I never let it keep me inside, and you shouldn't either. You only live once. So get on out there and do not let this keep you in. Honestly, this is not you. This is you are not your hair. You know, there's so much life to enjoy and to live. So get out there and enjoy it, and never let hair loss keep you inside. All right, everybody, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you soon.